Good afternoon. My name is Brian Leib. I'm the Executive Director of the Iranian Americans for Liberty, and I'm currently sitting in IAL studios right here in Washington, D.C. On behalf of our Board of Directors and supporters from all around the nation, please allow me to welcome all of you to this afternoon's Congressional Meet and Greet of 2022. This is our 6th Congressional Meet and Greet of this year. Now, last year in 2021, we proudly hosted 16 members of Congress, with members such as Congresswoman Young Kim, Congressman Byron Donalds, Congressman Chip Roy, Congresswoman Yvette Herrell, and many more. Thus far in 2022, we've hosted events with Congressman Pat Fallon, the former Acting Director of National Intelligence, Richard Grenell, Congresswoman Mary Miller, Senator Ron Johnson, and most recently with our good friend Congresswoman Claudia Tenney. This afternoon, I have to say I'm truly honored to have a fellow Pennsylvanian sitting across the table from me, Congressman Scott Perry from Pennsylvania's 10th Congressional District. But before we get started, I'd like to tell you a little bit more about our organization. And before I bring the Congressman into the conversation, I'm also going to tell you a little bit more about him as well. So we're going to skip right into the bio about the Congressman. Which just went blank on me, so maybe we'll skip that for now.
Yeah, we can.
And you can maybe
we can fill in the blanks.
Tell us a little bit more about your backgrounds.
Well, look, I'm the product of a single mom. I have an older brother and a much younger sister, but we grew up not having much. Our house didn't have any electricity, didn't have any running water. We had an outhouse or a privy, if you know what that is, and we had a tough time making ends meet, but we made it through. And the great thing about America is you can come from a background like that,
right,
and end up in the most important deliberative body, on the planet. I joined the military when I was 18 years old. Started out as an enlisted guy. I went to officer candidate school at some point, and I also went to flight school and learned to fly helicopters. And kind of the rest wrote itself. I stayed up for a fairly long career, over 38 years. Got to fly almost every rotary wing aircraft in the Army inventory. Rotary wing is helicopter. Instructor pilot, high altitude, all that stuff. And commanded a task force of about 800 to 1,000 souls that kind of ebbs and flows in Iraq. All mission sets, attack, reconnaissance, general support, heavy lift, medevac, did all of that in southern Iraq, for an area the size of about the state of Georgia, right? Yeah. So, and retired as an 07, that's a brigadier general. Also ran a business, a mechanical contracting business. When I was in high school, I went to Votech for auto mechanics. I still have a full tool set, or actually a couple of them. I still tinker. I'm a big fan and a supporter of learning to do something where you can make a living with your hands if you have to, and don't be afraid of that and don't be ashamed of it. So served a little bit in the state legislature, and now I'm here in Congress trying to save the Republic and, quite honestly, save the world.
Right. And your rank when you retired with the Pennsylvania National Guard was?
Brigadier General.
Wow.
Yeah.
Quite amazing. Pretty amazing. All right, we have our questions back up here. Thank you for giving us that intro. It saved me speaking a little bit more about you. But Congressman, we're going to jump right into the Q&A here. First question, let's talk about your committee assignments.
Okay.
Very important committee assignments. You sit on the Committee of Foreign Affairs and also the Transportation Committee as well.
Right.
So the Foreign Affairs Committee, very important, especially for the work that our organization does. I'm curious, when Republicans take back the majority, hopefully, God willing, in November, do you envision maybe your role expanding a little bit in foreign affairs, and what can you maybe do a little bit more?
I sure hope so.
Yeah.
I would like to see the Foreign Affairs have a subcommittee on oversight. I would love to lead that subcommittee. We have a lot to look at, not the least of which is a potential return to the JCPOA, where the United States of America gives up every bit of leverage to the mullahs in Iran who keep on oppressing their people. For what? To allow Iran to become nuclear armed a little further down the line as opposed to right now. Look, I think we need to be very, very careful, and we need to be diligent. We have to take the opportunity to look at what just happened in the recent past at that moment, right, when we come into the majority in this fall. But we have to be prospective as well. We have to look at the very near future and the long future. Iran is very dangerous in this regard, right? They're not enriching at 60% because they want a peaceful nuclear program. They don't have a ballistic missile program because they want to be peaceful. They have a ballistic missile program to deliver nuclear armed weapons around the globe, and we have to be very sensitive to that. We have no beef, as you know, and we have a great respect and love for the people of Iran. It's their government that we take issue with. And so we need to understand what has happened during the Biden administration and try and find some path to support the people of Iran that wish to breathe free.
And as you know, before jumping into the next question, the Iranian people have been on the streets for almost over a year and a half now, protesting their regime. And of course, there's been silence from Biden and from his administration.
And it's not just in the cities, in the rural areas, right? And of course,
all throughout the country.
Right. These people take their lives into their hands. It's not like America, when you can literally break the law by protesting in front of a Supreme Court justice's house and not be prosecuted. All you have to do is speak out against your government, even in your own home, and they will come for you. So this is the level of oppression in Iran, and America as the beacon of freedom that everybody looks to, the beacon of leadership in this regard. We should be, the administration should be. It shouldn't just be Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania and Brian here talking about supporting the people that are trying to do the right thing in Iran. Our administration should be shouting it from the mountaintops. We stand with those people.
They should be, but they're not.
Right.
Thankfully, there are members like yourself and many of your friends in the House that are certainly raising your voice. And trust me, the Iranian people see it, and so do the Iranian American community.
Well, we know the Iranian American community does, but we wonder, how do the people in Iran, how do they ever get this information when everything is shut off to them? They only get to hear what their government tells them is the truth. And in their hearts, I'm sure they want to believe something different, but having that validation can be really empowering, and we just absolutely need to do a much better job, and that comes at the administration.
Sure, and our organization and some others have some tricks of the trade where we're able to make sure the Iranian people do see these messages, and trust me, they do.
That's great.
And it hits them in the heart. So, Congressman, thank you for telling us a little bit more about foreign affairs and your role there. Let's talk a little bit about border security, which I know is an issue very important to you and to the House Freedom Caucus, which you are now the chairman of. Not only do we have illegal aliens that are crossing our border at record levels, but as you know, we also have fentanyl that is also crossing at record levels. Fentanyl is now the leading cause of death, I believe, for Americans aged 18 to 45. It is a true crisis. We have a lot of crises that are happening in this country, but this is a real, actual crisis. You've been to the border a couple times with several of your colleagues. What's a common sense approach to dealing with this?
Look, a common sense approach, Brian, you know this. It's just what you do at home. Your country's no different. This is your home is where you live. Your country's where you live. At night, when you go to sleep, you lock up your house, right? You don't let people just wander through your home and destroy it and take what they have of it and imperil your family. You don't allow that to happen, and we should not allow that to happen at our front door of our country either, which is the border. And fentanyl in particular, I really believe that we're looking at it incorrectly. We need to take a different viewpoint of it. This isn't just overdoses. This is the Chinese government, with the help of the Mexican cartels, poisoning American citizens. 107,000 last year died of fentanyl. These are people, a lot of times, not somebody that's using drugs nefariously. They might want to use an over-the-counter drug, but they don't want to go to the drug. They go and order it online somewhere cheap, and they don't realize what they're getting is a knockoff. And there's no reason for fentanyl to be in it, but it is put in it to kill Americans. This is drug warfare, is what it is, and we're allowing the poisoning of America. Not to mention, look, the human cost of what's coming, the people that are coming across the border, and potentially the national security threats. We all are interested in the security of our homes, security of our country, and if you're allowing untold people that you have no idea what their background is, what their intentions are, maybe some people from Iran that don't have good intentions for the United States of America coming across the border, residing within our country and plotting against our country. It is the federal government's first job. Their first job is to protect our country. And right now, quite honestly, the President of the United States, the administration, the Homeland Security Secretary, they are not only derelict in their duty, they are aiding and abetting not only drug smuggling, the poisoning of Americans, but human trafficking on a mass scale. And it is illegal. What they're doing is illegal, and they should actually be prosecuted for it.
Yeah, certainly support that 100%. And it's not just illegal, immigrants and aliens coming from Mexico. Like you said, there are scores of people that are coming into this country from the Middle East, completely unvetted, right. Syria, Yemen, all of the above.
Over 140 countries coming across the border unvetted, just like you said. Yep. Look, there's a lot of people that are yearning to be free. Sure. And we get that, and all Americans want to help, but we have an orderly process to follow the law, and if some are allowed to break the law and some are not, then the eyes of justice are not blind, and we cannot exist in a system like that.
Yeah, we'll keep up the fight on border security.
We certainly will.
It's not just important for elected members sitting in the House of Representatives, it's important for the American people as a whole. So our next question, we're going to talk about America First. Right. And what that means to you. Now, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're a staunch ally of the former President Donald Trump. And in many ways, I believe he really helped to kind of reinvigorate this America First movement. Can you tell us a little bit more? What does America First mean to you? Or what does Pennsylvania First maybe mean to you?
Well, it's Pennsylvania First and America First. Of course, I represent Pennsylvania, and I love the Commonwealth, all of the Commonwealth. Yes, sir. Sometimes it vexes me, some of the things we do, but America First is really easy, and I did appreciate many of the president's policies. As you know, I was a great supporter of many of the things he stood for. This president, President Trump, was, I think, in my mind, the first president that really stood for what we call the middle class. People that are struggling every day to make ends meet, that don't have any connections, feel like they're not empowered. And he stood up for them, and you could see it in his policies. And the point of it is that I'm a representative from Pennsylvania in the United States House of Representatives. Certainly, we want to help all our friends and allies around the globe. But our commitment first begins at home, and so it has to be what's good for America first. And too oftentimes it appears to the American people like we put special interest first, whether that's corporate special interest, whether that's a foreign special interest, and they're saying, wait a second. This is my country. I'm a citizen of it. I'm paying the taxes. I'm paying your salary. We didn't vote for you to do that. Who's telling you to do that? Because it certainly isn't us. And that 4 years of the Trump presidency, we saw America as the priority, whether it was American energy, whether it was our border, whether it was our jobs, bringing our jobs back home, that in many times government in the past, and in some cases, big tech especially, were happy to outsource because of labor prices or regulatory issues. They weren't interested in fixing things here at home. It was just easier to go exploit somebody else, at the same time hollowing out the hardworking, tax-paying, American-loving citizens in our country. And for once in my lifetime, we had somebody at the top that said, no, I stand for these people, and that's who I stand for.
Yeah, you certainly do, and I got to tell you, as someone from Pennsylvania, I know people in Pennsylvania really appreciate and love the work that you're doing. I hear that all the time, and
well,
honestly, I mean, not that I have tons of friends in your congressional district, right. But I remember anytime I was at any kind of an event in Pennsylvania, you were always certainly very well respected and.
Well, thank you for that. I work hard
at
it.
I'm
honest with folks. I'm straight with folks. Yeah. It isn't always what they want to hear.
It's okay.
But yeah,
sometimes it's what they need to hear.
Right.
All right, Congressman, we talked about a couple of domestic issues, and this one is domestic with kind of a little foreign policy in there as well. So next question is about the U.S. Agency for Global Media, USAGM. You know it very well. You know their subsidiary, quote, Voice of America very well as well. In March of this year, you and 6 of your House Republican colleagues launched an investigation into VOA for biased media coverage of Iran and partisan advocacy in favor of the now President Joe Biden. As a follow-up to this, you also sent a letter on May 10th to Chairman Meeks and Ranking Member McCall requesting the committee formally subpoena the acting CEO of USAGM and schedule an oversight hearing no later than July 14th. I believe that we are showing the letter on screen so the audience can see it as well. So first of all, your leadership on this has been amazing. It's a very important issue that more American people need to know about. Maybe you can update the audience a little bit about the situation, what you've seen. Have you had any response to your subpoena request?
I'm glad you asked. Unfortunately, it's been crickets, and I don't understand why. Certainly, if the Democrats and my friends on the left don't want to deal with it, certainly Republicans and my friends on the right should, just from, if nothing else, from a fraud standpoint, from a cost effectiveness standpoint, but not only that, from a foreign policy standpoint, the hard-earned tax-paying money of American citizens is being spent on messaging to people that we want to reach, including people in Iran who want to breathe free. We certainly don't want to be sending messages to them that support the Iranian dictatorial regime, right? But when we have sympathetic people working at the agency that do things like that, and it's not just Iran, but the agency itself has been very corrupted. We saw things like people that could not get a security clearance, could never. The agency actually got their ability to provide security clearances away from them. They got that pulled from them because they were just completely mishandling it. So what you have is, you literally have our government being co-opted by our enemies to send messages to our enemies that support our enemies. That's not what the Voice of America is supposed to be about. So you picture yourself, you're living in Iran under this boot of oppression, and you're waiting for some kind of sign, some kind of inspiration that there is hope, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Things someday in your lifetime can change, and you hear the Voice of America, and it supports the people that are oppressing you. It cannot happen. And look, if we don't get to it in this session, I guarantee you we're going to get to it in the next.
I have a feeling you're gonna follow through on that request.
Yeah, I am going to.
You're very right. I mean, Voice of America certainly has been corrupted in a lot of ways, and thankfully for your leadership and many of your colleagues, we're going to get to the bottom of this.
We have to get to the bottom
at some point.
American people demand accountability. Sometimes we make mistakes in the pursuit of doing the right thing. That's understandable. Mm-hmm. But these kind of things are not acceptable, and we cannot let them stand.
Well said. Next question. Let's talk about the current state of affairs vis-a-vis U.S.-Iran nuclear negotiations. As you know, world leaders were in Vienna for 6 weeks last summer, having these discussions related to the JCPOA. They returned again this year for the last couple of months for 3 more rounds of discussions. We're in our 10th or 11th or 5,000th round. I've lost track, to be honest with you. But there's still no deal, and from what we see, they're further apart now than they ever have been before. Now, U.S. Special Envoy to Iran, Robert Malley, who is also a former Obama appointee, has explicitly stated that the U.S. will lift all economic sanctions on the Iranian regime if they come back to the negotiating table. Malley has also privately lobbied to have the State Department remove the FTO designation from the IRGC. And Malley and his allies have said that this designation is purely symbolic. Honestly, the statement is absurd. The IRGC has directly and indirectly, through their terrorist proxies, killed hundreds of Americans. And just a couple weeks ago, you had Senator Chris Murphy from Connecticut, who appeared on MSNBC to echo Malley's talking points and to publicly lobby on behalf of the IRGC. So with all that said, do you have a message to Senator Murphy or maybe to anyone else about, should we lift this designation from the IRGC?
Absolutely not. To Senator Murphy and anybody else, your duty is to your Constitution and your country and the people that have served your nation, and the IRGC in the form of what we called explosive formed penetrators, made in Iran, sent to Iraq, sent to Afghanistan to kill American service members. That's the consequence, and to, quite honestly, like from my standpoint as a guy who has worn the uniform, there is absolutely, we shouldn't even be sitting down. These are terrorists. We shouldn't be sitting down with these people, sitting alongside them, but proposing lifting sanctions just so they'll come to the table. They are known liars. It's part of their code is to lie to get what they want. They have not been faithful. They don't honor any of the treaties they signed. Even though it was not a treaty, it should have been the JCPOA, but it was an agreement. They never honored that in the first place. And so to give them any quarter at all is, again, we shouldn't have to say America first. When you say that, people assign you some kind of stigma, right, that comes with that. But the fact that we even have to say that about our United States senators and representatives and administration, that you have to say, we want you to be for America first. Chris Murphy apparently is for the IRGC, for the Quds Force, for Soleimani, before members of his own community that would sacrifice their lives, put on the uniform, and go out, sacrifice for an idea, an ideal, the United States of America, the Constitution of the United States, and the freedoms we have. He stands with the people that kill them, unabashedly on TV. How can this be?
And if he's saying that on TV, what's he saying privately?
Well, you can only imagine it, right? And of course, the media doesn't even hold him to account.
They gave him the platform to say it.
Right, and didn't even take him to task for doing it.
No, they nodded.
Right.
In agreement.
So reprehensible.
Truly is. It really is. Let's keep the focus on the Islamic Republic. It's widely known that they fund terrorism all around the world to the tune of billions of dollars every year. In recent years, this regime has provided financial, operational support to Hamas and Palestinian Jihad inside of Israel, Hezbollah in Lebanon, the Houthi rebels in Yemen. Over the last couple months, there were Iranians that were protesting inside of Iran. This was one of their reasons. They were saying things like, stop funding the Palestinians. And we've helped to amplify the voices of the Iranian people. The people of Iran are sick and tired of their government funding these terrorist proxies all around the world while they don't have access to running water, dependable electricity, basic human rights type situations. So it's clear to us the Iranian people are seeking freedom and liberty from this Islamic regime in Tehran. Now, you've said it earlier, but I'm going to ask the question again. Do you stand with the Iranian people that have been rising up against this regime? And maybe do you have a message to President Biden on this as well?
I stand 100% with the people that are standing against the Iranian regime. And President Biden, sir, with all due respect, you can join the America First movement by supporting the people in Iran that want to be free and against the Iranian mullahs that and dictators, the theocracy there that imposes itself on the Iranian people under force and under fear. Iran cannot become a nuclear armed power, and unfortunately, every time that Iran is allowed to have access to financing, to capital, they don't help their population. They don't help the people that they allegedly serve. They help their very narrow interests of hegemony in the region and their hatred towards the West, towards Israel, towards the United States of America, and the Western civilizations in general. So something can be done here. Unfortunately, every time we do this, the Iranian people suffer along with the regime. But the only way to weaken this regime is to cut off their resources. That is the only way, and that we have from the outside. And so we must be vigilant in doing this, but at the same time, we must let the Iranian people know that we stand with them, and we're going to be there to support them when they can throw off the shackles that bind them.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's a very powerful message, and as I mentioned to you earlier, the people of Iran do hear messages like this, and we're going to make sure they hear that. And you're right. I mean, there's so much that America can do, and so much that I think we were doing, and not me personally, but members like yourself and the former president and his administration, were able to get the regime down to around $4 billion in international reserves. Now, $4 billion is a lot of money to you and me, to a sovereign nation like Iran. That's a couple months of rent. Right. Unfortunately, that $4 billion has grown to over $40 billion in less than a year, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that President Biden is not enforcing oil sanctions. So the Iranians are selling about $1 billion a month to China in crude oil. Sanctions are on the books. He's not enforcing it. Shocker on that. All right, so earlier in this conversation, we talked about the IRGC. You just talked about some of the aggression that the Iranian regime has flexed onto America. And as you know, I mean, former Secretary Mike Pompeo, former U.S. Special Envoy to Iran Brian Hook, and other Trump officials, including the former president himself, have been threatened by this regime. Hook, Pompeo, and others have round-the-clock security details right now because of ongoing threats from the Islamic Republic.
Threatened assassination of American public officials.
But yet Joe Biden continues to negotiate with them. Thoughts on that?
It seems to me that a precondition of a discussion would be we want the threats to our public officials to end. That's a minimum standard. We're not even going to come to the table, and as a matter of fact, things are going to get much worse for you in every paradigm until this ends. If you want to deal with civilized nations, you yourself must act civilized. That doesn't seem to be much of an ask, quite honestly. That seems to be a very obvious minimum standard, right? If you had a bully in your neighborhood that was setting fires to your home and attacking your family members when they walk down the street, the last thing you would do is say, hey, look, I just want to come over and sit down and have a meal with you and talk about things that are going on. You would demand at least some level of safety for yourself and the people around you before you had this discussion. This is the America last viewpoint of this administration. That's what people see. They understand that no one in their right minds would do something like this, that love their own country.
It feels like insanity.
It's dangerous and it's disrespectful.
100%. Well, we're not dealing with rational actors. You mentioned that earlier.
Right.
You know, we're not dealing with people that we, as in Biden, is not dealing with a regime that is going to hold true to any of these promises. They've shown that time and time again. There was a report, I think earlier today, that the IAEA announced that, you know, they've been enriching at historic levels. And what did Iran do? They shut the cameras off this morning. Right. Shocker.
Yeah, it's not a shocker. They have lied every step of the way and disregarded and disrespected the agreements that they have signed on to or agreed to. So they cannot be trusted, and that's just who we're dealing with. That's the reality. It's an unfortunate reality, but it is reality.
Yeah, well, thank you for recognizing the reality. We appreciate that. So, Congressman, we've talked about domestic, foreign policy. We're going to kind of shift off of that a little bit here. You know, these next questions might be a little controversial. I will say there is no right or wrong answer here.
Easy for you to say.
No, there's no right or wrong answer. And since we're both, you know, from Pennsylvania, we're going to talk about some Pennsylvania stuff. It's going to have a little Commonwealth spin to it. So, rapid questions, 5 questions. There are no right or wrong answers. They're all right answers. Okay, here we go. Ready?
I'm ready.
Wawa or Sheets?
Sheets.
Yingling or Victory Brewery?
Yingling.
Hers or Utz?
Utz.
Roast pork or cheesesteak?
Cheesesteak.
Okay. Primo Hoagies or Permanente Bros?
Permanente Brothers.
Okay, you got it. You're done.
That's
Again,
tough.
there were no wrong answers.
Yeah, you
there.
want all of them.
They were all right
Can
answers.
I just say yes to all of them?
You can. That's what I'm saying. They were all right answers. Okay.
All right.
So, Congressman, thank you. I appreciate you
very
doing
much.
that, and we've reached our time limit for our conversation today. On behalf of my organization, the Iranian Americans for Liberty, I want to thank you for taking the time to connect with our community, and I'd also like to give you an opportunity before we close out here to provide some closing remarks. So, you know, we've heard a lot from you today. You are one of the most fearless leaders on the Hill, and we very much appreciate everything you do. What's your message to the Iranian American community and the Iranian people that I'm telling you will hear this?
Anything that we do here pales in comparison to the struggles that the Iranian people have living in that country under the jackbooted thuggery of the totalitarian regime. To Iranian Americans, thank you for standing up. Thank you for taking the risk that only America can take, and thanks for standing as a beacon of freedom and leadership around the globe, so that the people that are oppressed in Iran can see that someday there is a way to change this, and that the minute it happens, with welcoming arms, we will be there. We will be there for them, and to keep their faith, and to keep fighting for what they know has to be won.
Well said. Beautiful. Well, Congressman, thank you again for making this time to connect with our organization and with our community. It's really been a real honor to have you here today. To the audience, until next time, remember to lead with liberty at every turn of your life. Have a good afternoon. May God continue to bless America and the liberty-seeking Iranian people. Until next time.